Welcome to She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting. We're your hosts, Questian
and Nancy McClelland.
And every episode, we're digging into the real experiences, challenges, and unspoken truths of life in this profession.
Because if you've ever felt like you're the only one, you're not. And you shouldn't have to figure it all out alone.
A special thanks to our sponsors, Forwardly, Ignition, and Keeper, for helping us bring these conversations to life, enabling us to share out loud what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying. Today's episode is called She Believed in Me Before I Did.
We're going to discuss the importance of mentorship throughout our professional careers and why having female mentors is important for both women as well as men. And we love launching each episode with a story. Questian, as usual, I know you have one to share with us.
Yes, I do have another one. And actually, this story is a really good one because it really formed the premise, don't you think, Nancy, for this particular episode?
Absolutely. It really set the stage for why it planted the seed and also set the stage for like, why do we want to talk about this topic in the first place? Questian had texted me and said, oh my gosh, I just had coffee with a colleague of mine and it was such a great eye-opening experience. It was really wonderful. And take it away, Questian. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. And I shared this recently on the Unique CPA podcast when Randy had us on. But while we were having this conversation, she said something to me that I found very insightful and profound. And it was kind of putting the mentorship idea and the importance of it in one quote for me. And that was that we see in others what we fail to see in ourselves. And
wait a minute, I have to stop you right there. That is such a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
Say it again. We see
in each other what we fail to see in ourselves.
We see in others what we fail to see in ourselves. To me, that is absolutely impactful because whether you're on, it doesn't matter like what side of that mentorship relationship you're on. This is true in every direction and in every walk of life.
Yeah. And even in this conversation that she and I were having, she made several comments to me about why she looked at me as a mentor to her. And it was things that I, of course, did not recognize within myself that were very reaffirming. And, quite honestly, it just feels good to hear from someone that you are having any sort of impact whatsoever, especially when that's something that is intentional for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think as women, it is so common for us to focus on looking at our negatives, looking at things that we aren't good at, that we are often not paying enough attention to what our good traits are and all of the positives that we bring to the table. And so having other women specifically in our lives that recognize potential in us and recognize
Mm-hmm. And they help they help us. I know one of the things that I struggle with is if I'm naturally good at something, I don't really take credit for it. I don't think there's nothing impressive about this. It just is. And then other people will point something out and I'll be like, oh, it turns out not everyone has that skill.
Yes.
So yeah,
and because you're not thinking about it. It is. And you're not thinking about it because it comes natural.
In this particular situation where you were talking with this friend of yours, one of the things that I think is worth mentioning about it is that you were mentoring her in this situation, right?
Yes.
Like you were actually, and you saw in her some things that she didn't see in herself. But then when she was pointing that out to you, she ended up calling out, as your mentee, she ended up calling out something about you that you had failed to see in yourself. So
Correct.
it went in both directions, right? What types of things were you talking to her about when you were like helping her see what she couldn't see?
I was telling her that we were talking about her specifically at that moment, her presence in speaking and social media.
Mhm.
And I was telling her how well spoken she was, how articulate, how she is very insightful and very authentic in the way that she communicates in her social media posts when she's forming and getting ready for a presentation. And that actually, that conversation continued to move on to this, which formulated, I really think, a big part of what we're talking about today was that it's difficult often because she's in an industry, or well, she's in our industry, but she's in a role where most of the men are, or most of the leaders, several of the leaders are males, and they're amazing because they are really advocating and wanting to give her more presence and more, they want her to take up more space. So it's
Right.
incredible that she's got that advocacy, but what she seems to find is lacking, and what I have also thought is lacking and is difficult to find, is female mentors in roles that are leadership roles.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's one of the, or I guess we're going to be really talking about that quite a bit today.
Yeah, that gap is really amazing. I don't know how many of our listeners already know these stats, but so just to underline what we're talking about here, the um the accounting industry has entry rates of men and women that are approximately equal, 50-50, which is about our makeup um in the
In
population as well.
society,
So,
yeah,
yeah. So the entry into accounting does represent our basic societal equal genders, but advancement in our industry is completely unequal.
very
Women,
much.
yeah, women only hold about 19% of partner positions in CPA firms nationwide. I mean,
I
and
mean,
think about
that's,
that. 50-50 going in, 19% making partner. That
we have a
is
lot of
pretty
work to do.
stunning.
We've got a
Yeah,
lot of
we
work to
do.
do.
And so Question and I, when we have talked about this in the past, she is feels very strongly that a big part of that is that mentorship, intentional or informal, is a missing piece of this puzzle. Not having enough female leaders in mentorship positions to mentor other leaders.
Yes, that, along with that, we need buy-in from the men in the industry to recognize, is to look at that data and say, okay, we see that number. We do need to be very intentional with hiring or with promotion and making sure that we are promoting women into those roles, because I'm pretty sure that they all recognize along with us, or at least I hope they do, that doesn't mean that the other, what's that, the other 30% of women aren't in leadership roles are incapable of leading. We know that's
Right,
not the case. We
right.
just need They need the opportunity. Opportunities need to be
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah,
So,
and if, any of our listeners are also listening to Blake and David's accounting podcast, you know that there are some major accounting firms that have just completely scuttled their DEI programs and are going the opposite direction. And there are others that are doubling down on it. So,
yes.
think about what the future of leadership in those companies is going to look like. I want to bring up another really important topic here. Like, why is mentorship important, and why specifically for women?
Having a mentor, for the same reason that I mentioned this story with with our colleague, it helps you see things that you don't see in yourself, which really boosts confidence,
Yes.
and it increases and creates better mental health when you have mentors that are, they can be leaders, they could be peers, they can be come in any number of ways, but um
It really
it be
inspires you to do better work when you have more
yes,
confidence. And this
yes.
is, I'm going to give a small plug here for Bridging the Gap, which is my all-time favorite accounting conference, which is run by Randy Crabtree from the Unique CPA podcast and his company Trimerit. And it's all about how to run a sustainable accounting firm, not just for firm owners, but like how, as an employee or a contractor in a larger firm, how can you make that company culture be healthier and have an emphasis on all sorts of areas. It's not just about mentorship, uh, but one of the things that I did last year was I presented a panel. It was really one of the best experiences of my life. I presented a panel called "Vulnerability is a Strength," where I interviewed three just like major superstars in accounting, and we talked a lot about the importance of mental health in the work that we do, not just in recognizing. I mean, we're all happier and healthier when we look at each other and we go, "Oh, look, that's another human being over there," right? We're not just cogs in a
Yes.
wheel that's always
Yeah,
turning.
robots.
Yeah. But it's not just about that. It's that when you don't feel isolated and when you do feel confident and when you have a sense of what your roadmap might look like, when you have a sense of what your options are out there, you're just going to be a better contributor to your company, to society. If you're running your own firm, to your team members, or if you're in management, so being a mentor and receiving mentorship is definitely, and mental health is one of those huge benefits. And I'm going to take that a step further and say that another really important benefit in terms of mentorship is realizing your potential,
Yes,
right?
I agree because it's not just about feeling that you have the potential yourself, it's actually seeing somebody familiar to you or that looks like you or that is similar to you in a role, in a leadership role, and recognizing that you can get there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can you if you don't even know what the options are? I mean,
Yeah.
like there's no rule book. We didn't get like a guide when I popped out of my mother's womb like here's how to become an adult and here's how to, build a career in accounting and here's how to be a good boss and here's how to be a firm runner. Like we don't even know what those standards are. And so we are all making this up as we go along, no matter what role we're in. So, how do you know what roles you could play in society, in your career, or how to get paid for doing what you love instead of what everyone else is doing? Like I definitely, that's something that we talk about in with Misty Mejia in Theater of Public Speaking, where it's just like,
Mhm.
well, I don't know how I would love to be an educator and I would love to, get out there and have relationships with vendors to be sponsored to do education or this podcast, for example. Think about,
Yes.
this podcast would not happen if it weren't for our sponsors. Well, I didn't know how to approach people to ask how, hey, I love what I'm doing in accounting and I want to extend this to other people. There's no rule book. You have to
No.
have somebody you can go to and say, how does this work? How do other people
Well,
do
thankfully,
it?
you're very good at that. You were very good at it, so
Well, I'm very lucky because I'm very, very much into personal relationships, and I had built great personal relationships with Jane Ingram over at Forwardly and Chelsea at Ignition and Madison and Josh and Ben and all the amazing people over at Keeper. And they were immediately supportive of what it was that we were trying to do. But I would not have even thought to approach them to ask if it hadn't been for having Misty as a mentor because she told me what was possible.
yes.
When I was
Yes.
younger and I was trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do with this accounting thing, um, a mentor that I had who was a CPA could only tell me about becoming a CPA. He couldn't see
The
that
other
there were other
options?
options. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I didn't I briefly looked into like, well, what about managerial accounting? And I might
How
have had a
did
very different
you
path.
Can I ask
Yeah.
you, how did you discover what the other options were?
Oh gosh. Probably the internet. I still have a lot. I'm not kidding. Like
The internet
I kn
mentor.
the internet mentor, I knew that what he was suggesting that I do couldn't be the only option, but I didn't know what the other ones were. And I think when it's even harder when we can't see that there must be other options. And that
Mhm.
goes back to what you were saying about when you see people who look like you in leadership, or when you see people who look like you doing jobs, um, that you were like, I could do that. Like I saw people speaking on the stage at accounting conferences, and I went,
Me
"Oh,
too.
that's a thing I'd like to do.
I wanna do
How
that. Yeah.
I wanna do
Yeah.
that. How do I
Yeah.
make that happen?" You know, if I hadn't seen women on the stage speaking at NATP, Taxposium and IRS tax forums, which were among my earliest conferences, Claudia Hill in particular, she has no idea what a difference she's made in my life. But she would just get up there and she would tell all these stories about clients, and I thought, I wanna do what she's doing.
Oh,
So yeah, being able to see that there are other options.
I have a similar story, and I told her this recently too. When the fir I'm this was early, not too long after I met you, and I wonder, this might have been the first time we met in person. I think it was the Bookkeeping Buds retreat, and we were sitting it was in Chicago, and we're sitting in this room, and this very perfectly poised, very articulate woman comes up to the front of the room to present, and it was Carla Caldwell, and
Oh, of course,
she took us
Carla.
I know, she's amazing. I know
She
she took
is.
us through this entire, like, um it wasn't just a presentation, it was like a workbook. We had to do, like, a workbook on
Mhm.
marketing and some things like that, and I was
Hmm.
like, "I want to do that. I want to be able to stand in front of a room like that and not panic." Which brings me to, I'll have to at some point, I'll get to it. My story about you pushing me to take theater of public speaking. So,
Oh, yes,
um,
for sure, for sure.
but
We'll
first,
get to that.
I want to ask you, what do you think? There are different types of mentorship, right? So, what do you think the best type of mentorship is, or is there a best, or what has worked best for you?
Well, okay, so for a moment, I wanna take it back to the options in terms of, like, CPA or
Oh, okay.
management, accountant, and EA, and all of those things, because this ties in very much with what you're talking about.
Mhm.
There are the mentors who can tell us about what our options are in terms of credentials. And that's something that I try to talk with the people in my Ask a CPA group, and people in Bookkeeping Buds, or people who come to me for one on one mentorship. Um, People often will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, I really would love to get started in bookkeeping. Which credential is best?" And I'm like, "I don't know because I haven't taken them." Right. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the areas when you talk about what's the best kind. I I think that that really depends what it is that you're looking for, and finding somebody who can say, "I don't know all the answers, but for example, here's this Google sheet that Hector Garcia put together in 2022 about all of the different certifications that are out there. I don't know which one's best, but whichever one you end up taking, will you please get back to me with more information, because people ask me this question all the
Right.
time."
Yeah.
Right? So there's a good example of, like, talking about what's the best way to get started as far as credentials are concerned and certifications are concerned. What's the best next step to take? So there's this one woman who I absolutely adore, Hope Brown. She's in Ask a
Oh,
CPA,
I love
and
Hope.
yeah, I
Yeah,
love
she's
Hope. You're
amazing.
going to you're going to see her. You're going to
I
see
met
her.
her. I met
No, no,
her.
I mean our audience.
Oh,
is gonna see
Oh.
her on stages. This woman is
Oh,
gonna go
yes.
far. She's doing
Yes.
such great work. And she's called the tax-minded bookkeeper, and she's tax pro, but she's not credentialed. And so I went up to her at Bridging the Gap last year and I was like, "Hey, talk to me about this. How come?" Because I know she knows her stuff. She's like I was back when I was doing taxes before becoming a CPA. And she was like, I've got a family and I've got a business to run and I've got all of these volunteer things that I'm committed to. I haven't had the time." And so I was able to say, "Hey, CPA is not your only option. Consider
Right.
the EA program," and gave her some study suggestions, and talked about which organizations you could be a member of, where you might get a scholarship, and things like that, right? And so that's like from the beginning of your career to the middle of your career to the end of your career. There are so many places where in our career path where we need mentorship, but there are also different types of topics. So I don't know that I could say the best kind of mentor. I think what's important is that you're looking at your goals. And this is
Yes.
something that I needed a mentor to tell me: "You should look at your goals," right?
Right.
And that was Gaynor Milkey. Gaynor said to me, and this wasn't that long ago, she was just like, how are you going to get to where you want to be if you don't know what that is?"
Oh, yeah,
Right?
of course. I mean,
So
you
I
have
would
to
say,
start with the end in mind.
yes, absolutely. And so I would say to that, to answer your question, write down a list of what your goals are, of where you might want to be, and start running them past people. And in that process, you're going to start identifying what kinds of mentorship you need, whether it's, um, you know,
Formal or informal, for example, right? Like, I
absolutely.
mean, my experience has been that I have never actually had a formal mentorship program. So there are a lot of firms or a lot of organizations that will offer a formal mentorship program. I don't know why I can't say the word formal, but it doesn't seem like it's coming out right. I have always had the best experiences though with informal mentorship, and it
Hmm.
really comes down to finding someone that, as you were saying, fits in with your goals
Hmm.
and has the maybe has some of the same values that you have and such. So that can help you kind of determine who to approach.
And as a matter of fact, I mean, you can start one step before that. You could be like, "I don't know what my goals are because I don't know what's out there to be done. Like, I don't know what my options are. I don't know what my potential is," like we were talking about earlier. So
Yeah.
go to somebody who is on LinkedIn, who's doing something you think looks interesting, and reach out to them and be like, "Hey, can you help me? Can you help me create a set of goals because I don't know what the options are?" Or go to somebody who's a coach, because there's a Venn diagram of mentors and coaches, and there's some overlap there, right? It's not the
Yes.
same thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you can find somebody who actually is really good at just that thing. You can go hire Gainer and say, "Help me define
With
what my goals
this.
are."
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
then once you know that, you can be like, "Well, do I need technical assistance? Do I need confidence building? Do I need a roadmap to figure out how to make partner, for example? Or do I want input into what kind of program I should go through, or education that I should go through?" So it's really hard to do that if you don't know what your options are. So I would recommend that people start general, define those goals, and then get more specific. And remember that you can do that again over and over and over for the rest of your life. I am going to be turning 53 years old in a couple of days, and I am still in need of mentorship. We need to both have and be mentors at every stage of
Correct.
our lives. I
Yes.
mean, my
Well,
therapist has a
and seeing
therapist, right? Like
right?
she's gonna
Right.
she's taking it from me, and then she's got to have somebody that she goes to. There's a good analogy.
I think it's also important, we need to the first step towards accomplishing those goals is believing that you can, right? And part of
Yeah.
believing that you can is seeing other people accomplishing it.
Yeah,
or
visibility and
correct.
representation. Yeah, that's the first
Yes.
step. How do you believe in yourself doing something if you've never seen anybody in that role doing it before?
Yeah, seeing other women in leadership normalizes that ambition for younger women. I certainly know that it did for myself, and I'm sure that it did for you as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. What was your first experience? Let's dig into that a little bit. What was your first experience seeing a woman truly lead in this profession? What was that experience and what did it do for you?
Oh my goodness, I have to think back to I think honestly it was the I was in my 20s
Mhm.
and I worked at a big 4 and the chairman of the board was a woman.
Oh,
And I
wow.
felt like yeah, and I felt like she was a powerhouse. And
Yeah.
she happened to be she was located in the office that I worked out of. And so I would see her. So this was a big office in downtown Los Angeles. And so I would often see her. And I remember just being like, wow, she's the chair of the board. This is, unbelievable. And just being
Why
like,
did
could
that feel
I do that?
unbelievable? Why did
It
that feel
just
unbelievable to you? Like,
because
because
it
of
was
what?
so unusual. It was
Mhm,
so unusual. Like most of the roles that I have seen, most of those roles that I had seen especially at that time, it was men in those roles.
mhm,
And it was just known that it was very difficult for a woman to get to that place. And I would even say that it's still very difficult
mhm.
often for a woman to get in that place, especially with family. It can be
Yeah.
really, really challenging still. So, that was my
Not that
first
men don't
experience.
have families, but I mean, I think
No,
most of us would agree that societally we sort of expect
that
a
time
lot of that.
off. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we expect that to land on the shoulders of women because of biology, right?
yeah. I'll share a story quickly that, I was having a conversation because of She Counts, and I love that women feel comfortable sharing their stories, knowing
Mhm.
that we're doing this. And she was telling me that she worked for a firm for a very long time, was promised partner when she went in, was not given that partner position in the end, and it was given to a man. And one of the things that they told her before she ultimately left was after she had her first child that she wouldn't want to be in a leadership role now anyway because she was a mom.
Oh, that's so illegal, by the way. That is so illegal. And on the other
Well, of
hand, hold on
course,
a second.
but
I'm going to add to that though. Like I feel that pain because I've had I've had employees leave on maternity leave and we believe strongly one of our company values, right? Like we believe strongly that we should be supporting each other, not just like each other as a team. We don't call each
yes,
other staff or employees. We talk about
yeah,
each other as
team.
team members. And so it was very important to me to make sure that she had paid maternity leave um, to some extent. And so we really, dug deep to be able to afford that. And then, of course, I was really nervous. Well, is she going to be able to come back at the same hours she was? And she wasn't. She was sure she would be able to, but man, motherhood can really knock you on your hiney. And then she had a second child, and I was like, "Okay, we're doing this again," and it was really hard because then when she came back the second time, she actually was like, "I don't know if I could do this." Now we've all worked it out, and she's been with me
Well,
forever,
and
and
that's
I
what's
absolutely adore
amazing is
her, but it's
you
hard.
worked it out. It is hard, but
It's
you worked it
hard, but
out because
we
I
did.
know who you're talking about, and she's an incredible team member and employee, and it's like
Absolutely.
you wanna keep that talent, and
Yep,
people have lives and men have lives too, and so it's like having that balance, and you did what you needed to support her because, because she's
absolutely.
has
But
value, yeah.
it was two-way, right? Like, I was trying to support her, but she also was loyal to me and acknowledged my struggle and my needs and how her absence has affected that. We can't always meet during office hours. We might have to meet like in the evening after her, partner gets home from work or whatever. But
Yeah.
we just decided, and this is bringing it back to this mentorship thing here, like we just
Yeah.
decided that was important and made a point of it, and she rewarded us with her loyalty and commitment. And
Mhm.
and so other people are going to be able to see, and she has friends who will reach out to her and be like, "Oh, look what you're doing. You're raising children and working as a bookkeeper remotely for somebody who believes in you." And as a matter of fact, Kim Kelleher is starting a job board for women who are
Oh.
exactly in that situation. Yeah,
Oh,
we
I
should.
love that.
You know
I
what? We're
love
gonna put
that.
a link to that in the show notes.
Okay.
It's brand new and it's in beta right now, but I will reach out to her and see how much we are able to share about that, because I think that's gonna be a
Yeah.
really amazing resource specifically for women in this situation.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, because think about how much talent there is. And
yeah.
there are women at some firms that have to, I mean, I left my I left the firm that I worked at when I had my son, and there are some women that it wasn't because of them I wanted to, but there are some women who want, it's like you want to work. You still want to work, but
Yeah,
maybe you don't have the same amount
absolutely.
of time. And so having that, being able to go and work for someone who says like, I'm okay with that. I can be flexible. I don't mind if you need to work on the evening or in the evenings or
Mhm.
on the weekend, or we'll do whatever we need to do because,
Yeah,
that is just
because you're
part of
worth
all
it.
who we are. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're, a huge number of people have families and kids, and, we need to make
Yeah.
space for
I
it. So I
I
want
had a
to ask
very
you,
different experience than
that's what
you
I was
did,
going to
by the
say,
way.
is what was your first experience? Yeah, seeing a woman lead.
We do not have children, and so this has I am an extremely dedicated aunt of many, 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 many children. But and I'm a member of the village, but do not have children of my own. So I had a very different experience. I was working. I talked about this a little bit in the first episode. I was working as an accountant and bookkeeper and business manager at a world famous violin making studio. And the their tax preparer, their CPA, was Teresa Briggs, who ran her own firm. And so I saw very early on the potential, but didn't think that that was me. That was somebody else who did a different job and had nothing to do with me, right? I just really enjoyed working with her. But it never occurred to me that, like, I could or would want to do what she does running a tax firm. And she, to go back to the quote from earlier, she saw in me what I did not see in myself, and encouraged me to become a tax pro. And she, when I had my going away party, when I finally left that amazing, wonderful job, she gave me my first CCH master tax guide, which I still have. And she wrote inside it, a very inspirational comment, because she was like, "You need to do this. You are
I
gifted
love
at
that you
this."
still have it.
Of
I love
course.
that. Yeah,
Oh
that's
my gosh.
great.
No, that was, look, my hair is standing on end
Standing
right now.
up,
You can see,
yeah.
just, yeah, just thinking about that.
That was a pivotal
I
moment.
It was, and I don't know that
Yeah.
I would have gone into this industry had it not been for her. But, as you know, for me, learning tax was a huge part of what made me a really excellent bookkeeper. I believe very strongly, it's one of the reasons I started Ask a CPA, is that knowing about taxes, whether you're doing them or not, makes you so much better bookkeeper
I
and
completely
accountant.
agree.
Yeah,
I
and so
completely
she
agree. Yeah.
she connected those dots for me. She really did. So I got very lucky that I saw that early on in my journey. And a quote that I absolutely love, which is by Marian Wright Edelman: "You can't be what you can't see."
It's so true.
And she
It's
was
so
that for
true.
me.
You have to be able to imagine it, you have to have to be able to aspire to it, and I think that's an
Yeah.
amazing quote. I really like it.
Yes, that quote is so important to me. And actually, it brings us into the next topic, which is the psychology of mentorship, right?
Yeah.
Question and I have had really different experiences with upbringing. In some ways, we are just the completely opposite human beings. And yet, in other ways, it's amazing how growing up so differently from each other can actually, you end up with so much in common later on. There's a lot of overlap, even though, yeah, we're opposites and the same at the same time. It's like we're sisters. But yeah, so socialization, we've talked a lot about the fact that when you were growing up, your parents really stressed humility, and in being brought up in that way, it impacted your confidence. And I would love for you to talk about how mentorship helped you, what it was
Yes.
what you were like, and then how mentorship helped you um push through some of that.
Yeah, I think that they were trying to it was best intentions, right? They tried to balance, you know, wanting me to be confident with being humble. And so I was often, there were a lot of comments to try and help me, be humble and not boast too much, and sometimes I wonder, not I know this wasn't their intention specifically, but I think when it comes to young girls, we measure that differently, in unintentionally. We measure whether, oh, don't brag, don't boast, like that's kind of the things that we're told, or the things that you hear, or I heard a lot of, and not necessarily from my parents, but from other in other ways as well, at school and that sort of thing. So I think they were really trying to br- teach me to be a very humble person, and I feel that I am, but in some ways that also impacted my confidence, and has been something that I have struggled with. I still struggle with my entire life, and having I mean, you're basically every single day, single time we have a conversation, even before we started recording this, I made a comment, and I'm always making like self-deprecating jokes. And you said to me, you're like, stop.
Yeah,
You have
so,
to you have to put the positivity out there. And so
absolutely.
having a mentor, I've considered you a mentor ever since we've met, and having you and having other mentors say to me, giving reassurance about what you're doing, complimenting affirming your choices, your goals, your what's the word? Accomplishments. That's what I was
Yeah,
looking for.
yeah. And I
Ta-
wanna make sure that people know we're not just saying mentorship is, "You got this, girl. You're doing a great job. Go
no.
you." It's the combination of affirming what you're doing, mirroring
Yes.
behaviors, and also making sure that the person knows that you're not just blowing sunshine up their rear end, right? Like,
Well,
they
that's
need
why
to
it's
know you're
it's
gonna be honest with them
it's important
too.
to find, yes, a mentor who will not do exactly just that. They will tell you and be
Yeah.
open and direct with you. So you have to find someone that you have that relationship with. And you
And
brought up mirroring, and I wanted to I'm like,
I'm just laughing because I Question and I joke a lot about the fact sometimes she'll be like, "Oh my gosh, do you think it's terrible?" And I'm like, "Girl, I will tell you when it is terrible." Like,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
can anybody who
yeah,
knows me knows I
yeah,
will say it out loud.
yeah.
Yes.
You're gonna
So that
know,
means
Nancy.
that you it means though that you know you can believe me when I say the
Yes,
positives, right? So, I'm sorry, please go on with
absolutely.
what you were
Well,
saying.
no,
I
you
think you were
were
gonna.
Yeah, you brought up mirroring, and I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you, because there's neuroscience related to mirroring and affirmation, and I was gonna ask you to talk about mirroring
Yeah, well,
a little
there's
bit
so,
more.
if you're interested in this, anybody who's listening, I really, really, really encourage you to Google mirror neurons, because mirror neurons, they're a real thing. And this is actually what makes it possible for us to learn something without doing it ourselves. So if this is something I learned from theater of public speaking. Um, I think I had come across it before because it's a topic that my husband's very interested in, mapping the brain. Um, But when we are looking at somebody teaching something on a stage, for example, or in a webinar or whatever, and they pull somebody from the audience up to help illustrate something, the audience, this is really mind blowing. The audience can actually learn that thing as if they were doing it themselves.
That's amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, that's
And
really incredible.
that's mirror neurons at work. That's and that's just one example of how they work, but when we're talking about mentorship, that's extremely valuable because we can watch this behavior in others as an example, and we can imitate that example.
Yeah,
We
emulate
can
it.
emulate it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Um
love it.
and then you talked about affirmation
Yes, yeah,
before,
so
and how that
yeah, when you
yeah, go ahead.
receive affirmation from someone, from a mentor, we actually have a dopamine reaction, and that will reinforce the behavior that created the affirmation in the first place.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
hearing that you did something, getting a positive affirmation from it makes you much more inclined to continue to repeat it because, you're getting a dopamine increase when you
Yeah,
do.
exactly. I mean, when we receive positive social feedback, especially, I'm gonna add this, from someone we trust or admire, that has been very, very important to me. It actually reshapes our self-image.
Absolutely.
One of our upcoming podcast topics is called I engage in too much negative self-talk like a stupid idiot. And
I love that
and this
title.
is thank you. Yeah, no, that is related to this, right? And so when we're getting affirmation about the things that we've done well, we're likely to we're likely to repeat that behavior. And this is where I know you want to talk a little bit about my our experience
Yes.
as mentor
Yeah.
mentee relationship.
Well, and I would say that that is a very good lead into our show title, which is She Believed in Me Before I Did, and that very much is how I feel about the start of our relationship. I mean, I a story that comes to mind specifically is, and I've told this story before, but when I first before I started speaking, I couldn't hardly get on a Zoom call, so we would have, like, bookkeeping buds meetings, and I couldn't even speak up on a Zoom call. I was
Or even
so
team meetings when you were working for me
yes.
as a contractor
Yeah.
and we would
Yeah.
have a team meeting in Zoom.
Mhm.
She was so quiet and meek, and I was like, I know that's not who she is inside because it comes
No.
out once she gets comfortable enough in a one-on-one. So like you have so much to share with the world. You have so much like your capabilities and your experiences, and I'm like, why can't I get that to come
And so
out?
you told me to take Misty's Theater of Public Speaking course, and I did, and when I went into that course, I said to them, and I see Misty as a mentor as well, and Krista, and to that point, I would say mentors come in all different ages too. Krista is younger
Mhm.
than me, and she is an
Yes.
incredible speaker, and I see both of them as mentors, and so but the point I was gonna make about that was that, I went into this theater of public speaking program thinking and feeling like I couldn't speak up in a webinar to coming out of it after. And also, one of the things that I told them before I went into it was I go to conferences and I want to talk to people, but I am so too shy to like walk up and just engage and start having a conversation with anyone. And that was one of my big goals before I went to the first Intuit Connect, or it was QuickBooks Connect at the time. Before I went to that was to be able to go up and just have a conversation with someone. And I accomplished both of those things, and by the time the program was over and we were, like, 6 months past it, I would say, I was delivering my first webinar for Bill. And
Yeah.
so, it was, that you telling me, "Hey, this exists," pushing me to do it, and then going through that program and continuing to have those relationships and
And
adding mentors
continuing
to
to
it.
hold you accountable to
Yes.
this day because, you'll say like I think this just happened yesterday. Yes, I'm going to submit this topic to Intuit Connect for the conference, but I'm sure they won't take it. And I was like, hello. What are we doing? Is that your lizard brain trying to protect
I did say
you?
that, yeah.
You did. That is that your lizard brain trying to protect you from rejection?
Yes.
And yes. So and that's a normal thing. We all have a hippocampus, right? That is what it is
Mhm.
for. It is to go watch out, danger, danger. And so this accountability of mentors can, we're colleagues and yet I still have to catch you on things and you have to catch me on things. And so the
Mhm.
mentorship goes in both directions. I feel like we've made the case for mentorship very
Yeah, I agree.
strongly. I
Just, like, beat
want
it
to
over the
shift.
head.
Yeah. I want to shift to talking about practicalities. Like how do people make this happen, right? We
Yes,
the who,
yes.
what, where, when, and we've covered the why. We've covered the why.
Yeah,
So who, what, where, and when. We talked a little bit beforehand, and you just talked about age. It's not like older and younger. That doesn't matter. It's not necessarily whether they're in a position of leadership, what their
correct, yeah.
title is. The most important thing is that you look for alignment in values and a communication style that you respond to. And it doesn't just have to be women. Some of my greatest mentors were men. There was one person in particular,
I
again,
agree
that,
with you.
yeah, the same for you.
Yeah.
When I was at the violin making studio, Joseph Curtin was my boss. He's the famous MacArthur genius violin maker who's so amazing. And he was married to an extremely strong, inspiring woman, Jessie Richards. They were both very important in my development during that time of my life, my mid-20s. He actually talk about seeing in each other what we don't see in ourselves. He wanted me to participate in addition to doing business management and bookkeeping and accounting and all of that. He wanted me to participate in selling the violins. Now these are very expensive violins. This would be for like somebody who can't afford an antique that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Oh, but you can get one for, 20, 30, 40, $50,000. Like these were very, and so selling those, I was just like, no, I'm not in sales. I can't do sales. I don't want to do sales. And he bought me a book, which is somewhat outdated at this point. I will warn you. But I still have the copy that he gave me. It's called Selling is a Woman's Game. And that book talked about how the kind of sales that I think of, used car salesman trying to sell you potentially something that you don't need or isn't the right fit for you, is very different than building relationships and trust and trying to listen to what the customer or client needs and then find something that will fill that need and explain to them how it fills that need, right? It's not
Yeah,
what we think of as selling.
selling.
It's just matching the person's needs with something you have and they give you money for it. And he pointed out,
Such a
you're
good way to think of it.
already, isn't that?
Mhm.
He pointed out, you're already selling because you're representing our brand. You're welcoming people. The orchestras, when they came through Ann Arbor, through University Musical Society, would come to our violin making studio for a reception after the concerts. And I would talk with them and develop relationships with them, and we'd find things in common and we'd keep in touch. So there was a really good example of a man actually pointing out something that was a strength that I, as a woman, more naturally had that
I
that
love
could
that.
help. Yeah.
I love that.
And then another example was when I accidentally started my own firm because I had my first consulting client. And the woman who became one of my greatest mentors in life, Claire Karchmar, she found herself suddenly and somewhat unexpectedly in the chief operations officer role. That was not her background. Um, she needed, and then I was an outsourced CFO. And so I reported to her in that role because I was outsourced. We weren't like in different corner offices. So I basically was like a consultant to her so that she could head the whole team. She needed my technical mentorship because that wasn't her background, but I needed her business acumen. She was the one who taught me, come to me with solutions, not problems.
Yes. So
That was one of the
important.
biggest ones. I would come to her and I would be like, I'm shocked. I would always say, I'm shocked that this horrible thing is happening, that, you guys aren't handling your accounts receivable
She's like, "How what are
correctly.
you gonna do about it?"
Yes, what are you going to do about it? As a matter of fact, she gave me, those little badges that say hello, I'm on them?
Mhm.
She gave me one of those badges that says hello, I'm, and she wrote shocked on it.
The next time I see you at a conference, that's what you're gonna have.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I'm never shocked anymore, though, because for one thing, I've been doing this for, 25, 30 years. But for the other thing, I learned from her, no, I'm not shocked. I am dismayed, or I'm
Yeah.
disappointed or I'm frustrated. But how are we going to fix this problem? Let's focus on that.
I would also say that speaking of those badges and conferences, we should talk about where where you find
Yes.
mentors, right? So, uh, for me, bookkeeping buds was huge, but
Yeah.
conferences as well, and
Yeah.
just online, or where you're already working oftentimes. And it's important to just ask them. What's the
Yes.
worst they can say? No?
Yeah.
Oh,
You have
darn.
to
Okay,
ask.
no, sorry. You have to ask. Yeah. I mean, you told me no
Or it
multiple
could
times, and I just kept going.
I was just about to say, even if they say no, be persistent, because that's how I ended up becoming Questions mentor way back when.
Yep.
Yeah, conferences are great. LinkedIn, Facebook groups, mastermind communities. My mastermind community is absolutely incredible. I met them through Realize, which is an online community as well. There's Roundtable Labs is an amazing place. Obviously, my Ask a
Mhm.
CPA community is a really great place. There's so many incredible places out there where you can find mentors, but you have to ask. Like you need to reach out and say, this could be helpful. I know Don Brolin was in a situation where people were asking her and she was saying no because she was like, I don't have anything I can offer them. And I was like, Dawn, are you high? Like, do you really, have you looked at yourself? Like
I don't have
your
anything. Oh,
can
well,
you
that's
imagine?
a
I mean,
good
of all
imposter
people.
syndrome, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, right?
yeah.
We all have imposter
Sometimes
syndrome.
sometimes it's your mistakes and your failures and your experiences that make you a more valuable mentor.
Definitely.
But to that point of
Definitely.
asking, it is hard to admit that you need help. It can be. And it was very hard for me. I'm going to give you an example to go back to bookkeeping buds. So here I am. I'm a CPA who runs we do the full arc. We've got bookkeeping, accounting, tax, and advisory services, right? And I consider myself a very good bookkeeper. But for me, I feel like I'm a really good bookkeeper because I understand how books and tax are related to each other, and I understand how trend analysis can help, the advisory part of it can help businesses do better. I'm not gifted at QuickBooks. I mean, maybe I am now that I use Right Tool because it's so much easier. But the shift from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online was very hard for me, and I was very resentful and frustrated, and I would be embarrassed to say in bookkeeping buds in meetings or in our Slack, um, I was embarrassed to say, I don't know how to do this thing because I felt like, well, I'm a CPA. I should know all of these things. And I run my own firm. And I was embarrassed, but I just needed to take a deep
I
breath
get
and
that way
go,
sometimes too. I
do
feel
you
the
really?
same. Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I'm speaking on a topic. We're teaching, we're speaking. It sometimes it feels like you're supposed to know all the answers and you're supposed to know everything. And then you have to ask someone how to do something that you feel like you should know. And it's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons Melissa Miller Ferguson is my business bestie, is that I feel so comfortable being able to go to her and say, I have no clue what I'm doing. And she'll be like, here's a loom. And she
yeah,
just shows me. And I'm like,
here you go.
oh, thank you. It's just incredible. So swallowing your pride or your or pushing through that fear is a natural thing to have to do when you are looking for mentorship.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And then there's also thinking about that our needs are always changing, right? So having mentors in different phases of your life, different parts of
Yep.
your career for different reasons. Like you and Melissa have that relationship because if you need something in QuickBooks and yeah, I think I reached out to you because I usually only work with nonprofits and I had a client recently that wasn't a nonprofit that it was doing a huge cleanup on and I saw something that was really weird and I said to you, "Is there
I
any
remember.
reason why somebody would do this?" Because it was an S corp and or I mean, I think it was a partnership, and you said to me, "No, your instincts
No.
are correct."
That's what we
So
do
just
in our
having people you
mastermind a
feel
lot.
comfortable
Our
asking.
mastermind, if through Realize, is all women who are all in tax. And it we feel very comfortable reaching out to each other and being like, can I just get
Maybe
a
I should know this, but I don't.
but I don't, or maybe I'm having a brain fart or reality check. Like I do know this, and I just want to make sure that it is that what I'm saying is true. So being clear about what you want guidance on, sometimes you need help with technical things. Sometimes you need someone to bounce ideas off of. That is
Mhm.
something that is a role that a mentor can play. And sometimes you just need someone to
To
believe
vent to?
in you. Yes. Venting is part of it. Sometimes you need
Somebody that
somebody to
knows
vent
your
to.
pain.
Yes, and sometimes you need somebody to believe in you. Absolutely. I would love to briefly touch upon some of the gender dynamics
Yes.
in mentorship. I know we've talked a little bit about that.
Mhm.
Um, Female mentors can offer unique validation, but male mentors matter too. Like what I was saying before with selling as a
Yes.
woman's game,
Yep.
or when I my very first consulting gig that I was talking about with the COO becoming a mentor to me. Their external CPA, their tax pro, he was the one who actually advocated for me regarding pricing in that first consulting role. He was like, don't do this for a penny less than X dollars per hour. And it was I was like, oh, I'm gonna make X dollars per hour, which to me it felt so huge. And he was like, look at what you're providing to them and look at what a deal you are compared to if they had to go out and hire a CFO, right? So
Yeah.
men can make a big difference. On the
I
other
also
hand,
want to
oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, I was what I was gonna say. I also wanna add that, and I'm wondering if this is where you were going to, I'm not sure, but I think it's important to point out that there are pitfalls in mentorship
Yes,
as well, and making sure is this where you were going also?
you go for it. You go.
Okay. Making sure that this is why it's important to choose the right one and not feel bad if you have to abandon them because it's important as a mentor and a mentee choosing a mentor that you make sure you're not choosing someone who is more interested in making themselves look good than building you up. And I think this
Yes,
happens more so when you're in a when you have someone that's a mentor in a superior position to what you are in.
although
And
it happens at all
of
levels,
course,
absolutely,
it happens at all levels.
especially when people are feeling insecure. It can look like mentorship, but it's really patronizing and condescending and sometimes
Well, and I
bullying.
think that they fail to recognize in that situation that when you build somebody up, I mean, you should do it for altruistic reasons, let's be honest. You should do
Yeah.
it because it was done for you. The same, that's what I do. It's been done for me, so I do it for other people. But if you are mentoring someone, it is if they look good, if you somebody that works for you does something that looks good, the fact that you've helped them get to that point makes you look good too.
Yes.
It's
Yes, and
not about
we've
stealing
both
someone's
had
thunder.
leaders yeah, we both had leaders take credit for our
Yes.
work, and so I really wanna caution you about, what that might look like, and I'm gonna give you an example of a warning sign. Um, if there is something that has happened with somebody that you're thinking might be a mentor to you or might be in that role, and it would never happen to a man, and this is whether the mentor character is a man or a
Ugh,
woman.
so
If
true.
something happens that would never happen to a man, this is not your person. Okay. And so my example is I was really struggling at where I was working at a nonprofit. My first job in Chicago, I was accounting supervisor there, and I was really struggling because I had been given what felt like an impossible job, and it was overwhelming, and I really wasn't sure where to turn. And I was there really late at night working, and was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so frustrated with this. And I got up to take a walk around the building and I saw that the president was still in her office. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to talk to her. She seems like a really amazing person. I'm going to tell her how I'm struggling. And so she was, seemed, it seemed like it started really well. I went in her office. She sat me down. Sure. What's on your mind? What's on your mind? And I told her what was going on. And her solution for me was to make me herbal tea and tell me that I should probably take yoga. I am not kidding. Now, are those bad things to recommend to somebody? No. Are those
No.
the only solution you should give to someone who has just told you about a very real thing that is going on? Okay, that would not have happened.
Oh,
That would not
no.
have happened to a man. And I was like, okay, that didn't go well. She's not that person for me. So when you see warning signs,
Pay attention.
pay attention. Pay
I
attention.
wanna we only have a little bit of time left, and I think it's really important to hit on why some women may feel hesitant to be a mentor to other women.
Okay, go for it.
And I certainly can say that from my perspective, it probably leans into the whole imposter syndrome thing, is just feeling like, what do I have to offer? Like like what Don said, what do I have to bring?
What
What
do
can
I
I
have to
do?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so but I think we all have something to give. And it's important to look to your mentors and inside yourself to try and prevent yourself from having those negative thoughts. And I think that's a
absolutely.
it's a big part of why maybe some people aren't being
Don't see
mentors to others,
themselves.
don't see
Yeah, yeah,
themselves.
it's
Yeah.
important not only to, like we were saying earlier, it's important to both have and be mentors. And I think watching your own mentors struggle can actually be really illustrative. You see them bumping up against that glass ceiling. You see
Yes.
them dealing with patronizing leadership or condescension, where like a peer is supportive, but it's really a pat on the head. Look at how they react to those things that can impact our own experiences. And as we are struggling, just because we're struggling doesn't mean we can't talk about those struggles with mentees,
Yes, I
to go to the
agree, and I
point that
think
you're
it's
making.
important to see that. I see that with kids too, right? So,
Right.
it's like
That's actually true. That's actually true. Well, thank you
yeah,
so much for being here with us today. We are so excited about this project. And we hope this first, I guess our first intro was more of, or our first episode was more of an introduction to why we're doing this and who we are. This is the first episode with the meat in it.
that's
And
right.
we want you to be part of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, so I would like to actually ask the listeners to follow our She Counts podcast LinkedIn page and to join this conversation. So we will have a post set up specifically on the day that this launches for all of you to go to LinkedIn and answer a question for us. We want to know how firms and businesses can build good mentorship cultures and what has worked for you, what experiences with mentorship that you have had that were helpful. And so just all of your thoughts and comments on mentoring our in the comments of our She Counts podcast LinkedIn page.
And before we sign off, I want to leave you with one of my very favorite quotes, which I really feel embodies the heart of this topic and what we're trying to do here on the podcast. It's by Marianne Williamson. When you let your light shine, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same.
I love that. That's so true. Thanks for being here with us on She Counts, the Real Talk of Counting podcast for women.
And if something in today's episode hit home for you, well, that's exactly why we're doing this.
We want you to feel seen, heard, and never alone.
Remember that you can get CPE credit for listening at earmark.app. Links to that and any other resources will be in the show notes.
And please be sure to subscribe. And we would love it if you would share this with another woman in accounting that you think needs to hear it.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.